Good afternoon. We'll jump right in. I've got a couple of brief announcements. Today at 5:45 p.m., the White House will hold a background briefing for reporters regarding the administration's Iran strategy. Then at 12:45 tomorrow, the President will deliver remarks announcing the strategy to the country. Further details on both of those events will be forthcoming. Until then, I know you guys have lots of questions, and although I really enjoy answering them every single day, especially your more serious policy-focused questions that we tend to ask in here, I thought it would be nice, since we're at the White House and we have the option of calling in the Marines, that today we might call in one of our favorites, General Kelly. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Chief of Staff and let him make some opening comments and answer your questions today. And after he concludes, of course, our team will be around later this afternoon to answer any further questions. Thanks, guys.
Well, good afternoon. Great to be here. A couple of comments, I guess, and then open it up for Q&A. I would have to tell you that coming into the job as the Chief of Staff, I had decided to not do too much with the press until I got my feet on the ground and figured out what base I was on any given day. Prior to this, when I was at DHS and certainly as a Marine general officer, interacted with the press a great deal. But coming into this job, I really needed to get to know the lay of the land. I have done, I think, 3 off the records. The first one of which was, of course, violated. But thank you for all of you that didn't violate the trust from those off the record periods. I would just offer to you that although I read it all the time, pretty consistently, I'm not quitting today. I don't believe, and I just talked to the President, I don't think I'm being fired today. And I am not so frustrated in this job that I'm thinking of leaving. I would tell you, this is the hardest job I've ever had. This is, in my view, the most important job I ever had. I would offer, though, it is not the best job I ever had. Best job I ever had, as I've said many times, is when I was an enlisted Marine sergeant infantryman. That was the best job I ever had. So unless things change, I'm not quitting, I'm not getting fired, and I don't think I'll fire anyone tomorrow. So with that, John.
General Kelly, if I could, you said you're not so frustrated that you're thinking of leaving, but are you frustrated?
No, I'm not frustrated. This is really, really hard work, running the United States of America. I don't run it, but I'm working for someone who is dedicated to serving the country in the way that he's talked about for a number of years. There are incredible challenges. Economic challenges, healthcare challenges, all of that, obviously international challenges that have to be dealt with. I don't mean any criticism to Mr. Trump's predecessors, but there was an awful lot of things that were, in my view, kicked down the road that have come home to roost pretty much right now that have to be dealt with. This is hard work, John. And my only frustration, with all due respect to everyone in the room, is when I come to work in the morning and read about things I allegedly said or things that Mr. Trump allegedly said or people who were going to be fired or whatever, and it's just not true. That's my frustration. I mean no disrespect to you all. I don't know all the names, so you.
I appreciate that, and thank you for coming out here today. We hope to see you more often. Let's go to one of the hard things that is facing you right now, the situation in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. And since you're here to speak for the President, let's talk about his tweet this morning. Does President Trump believe that the people of Puerto Rico are American citizens
Yes.
who deserve the same access to federal aid as the people who live in Texas and Florida?
Yes.
What is his tweet about then?
The tweet?
The tweet where he says that we can't be in Puerto Rico forever.
I think he said the U.S. military and FEMA can't be there forever. Right?
He did, yes.
Okay.
First responders,
First responders.
And
the minute you go anywhere as a first responder, and this would apply certainly to the military, you are trying very hard, working very hard to work yourself out of a job. There will be a period in which we hope sooner rather than later to where the U.S. military and FEMA, generally speaking, can withdraw because then the government and the people of Puerto Rico are recovering sufficiently to start the process of rebuilding. I just got off the phone. I've talked to him many times with the governor of Puerto Rico. Great relationship. President deals with him periodically. We saw him when we were down there last week. So, you know, this country, our country, will stand with those American citizens in Puerto Rico until the job is done. But the tweet about FEMA and DOD, read military, is exactly accurate. They're not going to be there forever. And the whole point is to start to work yourself out of a job and then transition to the rebuilding process. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm Dr. Anthony Harper with the Intermountain Christian News and Christian Newspaper Association, and in light of the President in support of pulling out of UNESCO, what would the President's response, to UNRWA defunding, which is a UN agency that has been in schools specifically inciting kids to violence against the Jews, and our tax dollars going into that? Do you have any statement about, in light of UNESCO pulling out, about UNRWA?
No, I mean, I'm not as familiar probably as I should be with it. I would just offer that the responsible way to look at any program, and certainly when I went to DHS, and I did this in Iraq and other places I've been, when we're expending U.S. taxpayer money, we should look at every program and decide whether it is being successful. If it's not being successful, then change it so it can be successful, or sometimes you just say it's not going to work. Go ahead.
Follow up to that would be, the Prime Minister just came out today. There was a release, the government press office in Israel. Prime Minister welcomed the withdrawal from UNESCO, and I had met with the Prime Minister of Israel in May about the UNRWA issue. He's very concerned. He made a statement in Jerusalem Post not too long ago in denouncing UNRWA. So I thought it would be.
I'd have to get more familiar. Sorry.
General Kelly, Margaret Brennan.
Yep.
Yes, thank you very much for coming out and doing this. You focused a lot on process and establishing processes here at the White House. I'm wondering if you can explain.
Is this
to
the iron hand that I brought to the staff?
No, but did you?
No.
Is that how you see it? You don't see that you have an iron hand.
Just put some organization to it.
Well, can you
Put a
explain?
smile on my face. Although you guys with the cameras always catch me when I'm thinking hard, and it looks like I'm frustrated and mad.
Yeah, what is your frustrated face?
Huh?
But back to the question. Can you explain what the process was with this Pakistan raid, what the president's involvement was, how you sort of
Pakistan raid?
the Pakistan raid to release these Americans, who Caitlin Coleman and her family?
Oh, no,
the level.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
The level of the president's involvement and awareness and.
No, I think we have, roughly 20. In fact, about with 4 of them, the 3 children, of course, being U.S. citizens, and the mother, we've now reduced, and I'm not making a joke here, but we've now reduced the number of hostages by almost a third. But that's not to take away from all of unfortunate people that are still being held hostage. I'll use the term partners in Pakistan. We've been watching for the family. What can I say? I'm not making up a lie here. I'm just staying within the classification. Let me just say the Pakistanis, they're great partners in this regard that they are, and I think there's been a change. Hopefully there'll be a change in the cooperative relationship between the United States and in Pakistan. But the good news is the Pakistani officials got custody of the American citizens, 4 American citizens, 3 children, 1 adult female, and then of course the husband is a Canadian citizen. Took them into custody, held them for us, not for us, held them. We had arrangements to transport them back to the United States or to Canada, any way they wanted to go, medical treatment along the way. A lot of this, of course, would be psychological treatment. They've been essentially living in a hole for 5 years. I mean, that's the kind of people we're dealing with over there. Luckily, and thank God that the Pakistani officials have took them into custody, so to speak, from the forces of evil in that part of the world. And they're being cared for now as we speak.
Can you speak, though, about the president's role in that?
As a flag rank officer, gentleman with knowledge of world affairs, certainly you know the quote from Prime Minister Macmillan, events, events, events.
Yeah.
What are the events that keep you, let's say, concerned, awake at night, in terms of global affairs?
Well, I mean, they're the big ones. Actually, we get a nuclear threat from North Korea, a possible nuclear threat in time by the Iranians. Probably the biggest threat, the biggest concern, and it's not an immediate concern, if this continues in North Korea, if eventually other countries, I'll let it go at that, become nuclear powers. Obviously, we already have some out there. There'll be a real impetus for a lot of countries to develop or buy nuclear weapons. I would tell you this, in spite of what someone reported the other day about President, and I don't think he'd mind my sharing this, what he's said to me many, many times, and to the group oftentimes. I hear him most say about nuclear weapons that wouldn't be great if we could get rid of them all, as opposed to we need 10 times more. So even more than when he references the maintenance of nuclear weapons modernization, that doesn't mean increase in numbers. I hear him talk more about, wouldn't it be great? How could we get rid of nuclear weapons? So not a lot keeps him up at night. I mean, the good news is out there we have a great State Department doing the diplomacy thing night and day. As Jim Mattis and I have many, many times said when we were in uniform, if we don't fund the State Department properly, buy us more bullets. So out there in the world, you got the State Department doing what it does every day, and all the rest of the great Americans that are working those kind of issues. And you got the U.S. military, the greatest military on the planet. We don't like to think in terms of things turning military, but that's always an option. The great thing about our military is it's a real deterrent factor around the world, whether it's nuclear deterrent or conventional deterrent. All right, you.
Just to get back to a thing that happened a couple of days ago. The president tweeted, the problem with agreeing to a policy on immigration is that the Democrats don't want secure borders. They don't care about safety for USA. Do you think that's a fair characterization?
How I would put it is that there's an element within. First of all, let me step back and say, I believe that honest men and women can disagree on anything politically or otherwise. The one thing I draw a little bit of a line to is on the security of the nation. There are certainly people in our country that have the opinion that that open borders or near open borders are fine. People should be able to come and go. There are others, myself included. You can bet the president. But I think the majority of Americans feel as though security on the borders is important. Now, how you achieve that is a different story. I believe I have great relationships with the Mexicans. We have great relationships with the Mexicans on the border. They're in the counter-drug fight with the United States. In fact, in my view, suffer more from the our drug demand, which we don't seem to address. We're trying to now under the Trump administration. But places like Mexico, Central America suffer more from our drug demand and do more in many ways to stop that drug flow than we do in our own country. I was recently down in Mexico before I took this job and flew into Sinaloa and saw Mexican military risking their lives, pulling out tens of thousands of poppy plants that are eventually turned into heroin and eventually consumed by Americans. But we need to secure our borders, and that includes the maritime, our ports. We have unbelievably dedicated men and women, CVP, DHS, that are doing that every day. We need to reinforce what they're doing down on the border. We definitely need more wall or physical barrier. We have about 600 miles of that border now secured by some type of physical barrier. By the way, the Secure Fence Act in 2006, you ought to check it out. Who voted for that? Certainly Senator Obama did, I believe, Senator Hillary Clinton, Senator Chuck Schumer, all voted for it. And we have a worse situation on our southern border. And I'm condemning Mexico here again. They're great partners, but we have a worse situation on our borders 10 years later, yet there's this unbelievable resistance to securing our border. And again, some of that is physical barrier. All of that, for sure, is people, technology, things like that. So we have to secure our borders. And this includes, as I say, our ports, New York, Boston, Houston. Don't have nearly the issues on the northern border with Canada, Great partnerships there. But the problem with our southern border is the drug flow, and the illegal immigration flow rides on a network that right now comes up through into the Western Hemisphere from abroad, up through Mexico, Central America, Mexico, and into the United States. Got to do something about it. Yes, sir.
You talk about frustrations. Peel back the curtain for us, since you're in a first row vantage point with the president. What are his frustrations right now? And secondly, a big decision that's going to be upcoming is the Fed chair position, possibly here in the next few weeks or upcoming months. Where does that stand? How actively is the administration engaging that at this moment?
One of his frustrations is you, all of you, not all of you, but many of you. As I say, when I first started talking, again, I'm a reasonable guy, but when I read in the morning, I read well, I won't tell you what I read, but and watch TV in the morning, it is astounding to me how much is misreported. I will give you the benefit of the doubt that you are operating off of contacts, leaks, whatever you call them. But I would just offer to you the advice. I'd say, maybe develop some better sources. Some person that works way down inside an office, or just develop some better sources. The Congress has been frustrating to him. Of course, our government is designed to be slow, and it is. His sense, I think, as a man who is outside of the Washington arena, a businessman, much more of a man of action. I would say his great frustration is the process that he now finds himself, because in his view, the solutions are obvious. Whether it's tax cuts and tax reform, health care, infrastructure programs, strengthening our military. To him, these all seem like obvious things that need to be done to protect the American people, bring jobs back. These are all the things that he sees as vital to protect the American people, to advance American economy and whatnot. And the process is so slow and so hard sometimes to deal with. So I think those two things.
And the Fed, where does everything stand with the Fed right now? Are you guys days away, weeks away?
Some time away. I mean, there's still ongoing interviews, but every candidate. I mean, I'm trying to learn about things that have to do with what you're talking about. But all of the people that have been into interview have been really first-round draft choices, and we have more to come. And it's a very measured process. He has great, obviously, advisors to help him make that decision.
Thank you. President Trump.
Are the people in the front row like the most important people, or is it? No, seriously, how do you end up?
We're the cannon fodder. We're the first in line when they start shooting.
Okay.
General Kelly, thank you so much, and thanks for being here today. President Trump, in recent days, has gotten into a bit of a war of words with Senator Bob Corker, the latest Republican who he's had a public feud with. As his chief of staff, are you concerned that he's jeopardizing his agenda by feuding with members of his own party?
I'm not. I mean, he's a straightforward guy, the president is. That's the one thing I've found he is. I have found him, 9 weeks in the job, willing to work with anyone to advance the agenda being what's good for America, what protects America. You've seen him reach out to these people on the other side of the aisle. I think, not to get into, let me just say that when members of Congress say things that are unfair or critical, the president has a right to defend himself. When I read about things that are what I would perceive to be unfair or critical, unnecessarily critical, I will call members of Congress and just ask, is there anything I can do to help you with that misconception you have, or maybe explain to you why I did this or that. Oftentimes, members of Congress that I talk to will say, geez, I didn't realize it came out that way, I'm sorry, or no, I meant it, but it was kind of a grown-up comment, and so I'll take that to the president and say, but then there's others that are, as the president would say, grandstanding. I'm not saying Senator Corker's that way, I'm just saying that some people grandstand and kind of enjoy the attention. Of course, I've talked to
But
Senator
in the
Corker.
wake of this recent
I've talked to Board
fight?
Corker. Yeah.
And do his tweets make your job more difficult, General Kelly?
No. No. I mean, the job of the Chief of Staff is to staff the President, give him the best advice, or go get the best advice I can give him, help him consume advice, help him work through the decision-making process in an informed way. But that's my job, and that's what I do.
General, one question on Cuba, if I may,
Okay.
sir. The question on
You got it next. I'll go to you next.
Is it me or him?
Does the president believe that the Cuban government is directly responsible for these attacks on Americans? And does the president plan on closing the U.S. embassy in Cuba? And is the president aware of the visa crisis for Cuban
All right, what's the
families?
rule? How many questions can you ask? We believe that the Cuban government could stop the attacks on our diplomats. Now you.
We're waiting for the president to make a decision tomorrow about the Iran nuclear deal. Can you talk broadly about the strategy to counter Iran nefarious activities in the region? And will you list the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, as some member of the Congress has suggested?
I think I know that we have great partners in the Persian Gulf region, the Arabian Gulf. Clearly, we have a war that we're seeing every day being won in Iraq against ISIS. I mean, in the last 9 months, I never thought I'd ever feel sorry for them, but they're getting crushed every day. The caliphate's gone. We see them trying to escape from Iraq and get into Europe and places like that, which should cause Europeans much concern. But back on your question about Iran, the partners in the region we're very close with, great relationships with. We're out there. We have footprints on the ground, naval and air forces there, to just demonstrate our resolve, our friendship, and to try to deter anything that any country out there may do. So that's the approach we're taking to Iran right now. Clearly, the president has he's deep in thought, to say the least, about way ahead in Iran. And once again, he's not the only one that thinks that maybe the deal that was struck under the previous administration is a deal that, in the long term, even in the medium and long term, will protect America.
Thank you, General. I wanted to ask you about the effort to repeal and replace Obamacare. As we saw just a few moments ago, the president signed an executive order that he says will bring more choices for Americans, will lower premiums for Americans as well. It's October the 12th. He's been in office since January the 20th. Is there any particular reason why he didn't sign this executive order his first week in office? What's taken him so long? And my other question, if I may, General, the other question is very important. Do you blame Senator McConnell, the leader of the Senate, for the failure to repeal and replace Obamacare?
Yeah. On the first question, and I came in late to all of this, but the idea was, and it is a great question, all of what was in that executive order today, there was a sense that had the big bill passed, all of that would have been taken care of. So since the big bill didn't pass, and we probably won't have a health care bill until, say, the spring, this was a way to take care of as many Americans as he could legally with an executive order. As far as the second question goes, the Congress is an extremely complicated. It's designed to be an extremely complicated, slow-moving part of our government. I have nothing but respect for members of Congress and the staffs that work so hard for them. Sometimes it's like talking to Nancy Pelosi once. She's the leader, but boy, is it really hard to lead. I'd say the same thing about the majority leader in the Senate. There are 100 or whatever, 100 members of Congress that look to their states, have their own political baggage to deal with, and they're not always reliable on every vote to vote the way that the president or Mitch McConnell wants to vote. So, that's good. One more. Who's the lucky one?
Thank you very much, sir. First of all, congratulations.
For what?
For your new job.
Yeah.
So, as far as U.S.-India relations are concerned, recently many tragedies have taken place here, and Indian American community and India paid a tribute on 9/11 at the Georgetown University in cooperation with the Indian Embassy and also at the Gandhi Center, as far as the tragedy in Las Vegas is concerned. My question is that Indian Ambassador Mr. Sarna said that time has come now. U.S.-India should stand together against all these terrorism. And same thing, Prime Minister Modi, when he was here at the White House, he told President Trump that India is with the U.S. anytime, anywhere, as far as fighting against terrorism. So where do we stand, sir, today, as far as U.S.-India relations are concerned?
By the way, as I listened there, that face I had on was my listening intently face. The United States of America will stand with any country against terrorism. We stand with countries we're not so friendly with, and we stand with countries that we're extremely friendly with like India. This cancer of terrorism, as we crush it in the caliphate, as you all know, is moving in other directions, to include the West, into Western Europe. But the northern part of Africa is suffering terribly, and it will grow there. As it moves south in Africa, it's moving out into is already in South Asia. Very, very dangerous. I went to a very, very good conference that King Abdullah of Jordan invited me to, the Aqaba initiative, where he had all of the Southeast Asia countries represented, particularly the big Muslim countries, to include the Philippines. They have many, many Muslims, as you all know, in the southern part of the country. And the discussion was, what do we do as this, ISIS form of terrorism, cancerous, metastasizes in those parts of the world? And these countries are very, very afraid of that, because they've had to deal with it locally, but not, if you will, a threat that will go into places that typically you don't normally see Islamic terrorism thrive. So again, I would say that the United States will work with any country, does work with every country that is trying to get its arms around terrorism of all kinds. And there are different types. It's not all religious-based. There are various types of terrorism, but that would be my answer. But I think that... Thanks a lot.
Sir, is President Trump going to visit India?
Someone asked me then. Yeah.
Thank you, General Kelly. I have a question about the tweets. That's a big part of this administration. Do they get you by surprise, and are they official statements? And on the war against North Korea, what are the chances? Should the American people be worried about the war?
It's two questions. Which
Yes.
Which one should I answer?
Both.
The American people should be concerned about a state that has developed a pretty good ICBM capability and is developing a pretty good nuclear reentry vehicle. I would believe, I think I speak for the administration, that state simply cannot have the ability to reach the homeland, and for that matter, the homeland. Right now, there's great concern about a lot of Americans that live in Guam. Right now, we think the threat is manageable, but over time, if it grows beyond where it is today, let's hope diplomacy works. As far as the tweets go, it's funny. I read in the paper. You all know, you write it, that I've been a failure at controlling the president, or a failure at controlling his tweeting and all that. I was not sent in, or I was not brought to this job to control anything but the flow of information to our president so that he can make the best decisions. I have found that Mr. Trump, from the day I met him, he's a decisive guy. He's a very thoughtful man, I should say. He takes information in from every avenue he can receive it. I restrict no one, by the way, from going in to see him. But when we go in to see him now, rather than onesies and twosies, we go in and help him collectively understand what he needs to understand to make these vital decisions. So again, I was not sent into or brought in to control him, and you should not measure my effectiveness as a chief of staff by what you think I should be doing, but simply the fact is I can guarantee to you that he is now presented with options, well thought out options. Those options are discussed in detail with his team, and then he comes up with the right decision. But it's always, always, always focused on protecting America and advancing America's economic development, jobs for America, safety for Americans. And with that, I'll let you go, and I enjoyed reading about it tomorrow. Thanks a lot, everyone.
The president should lose their license, sir.
And a happy Thursday to you, coming to you from the Washington Bureau of ABC News. This is the Briefing Room. I'm John Santucci, alongside Megan Hughes and Justin Fischel. We had a surprise guest in the Briefing Room today. There was a collective, is that General Kelly, around the newsroom here. It was indeed. We have not seen General John Kelly since he's been White House Chief of Staff at the podium. And guys, it was kind of refreshing to see him up there. And he seemed to really be enjoying it and making it known from the get-go, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. Today, tomorrow, as far as I know, I'm in this job and I'm enjoying it.
And context alert, it was a week ago.
Yeah.
It was Wednesday, October 4th, that we had our Secretary of State giving a press conference saying, I am not retiring.
Right.
So all of these rumors, all of this speculation that there's going to be a big upheaval and more chaos in the cabinet and within the Trump administration.
He's now the third senior member of the cabinet to come up and sort of say, what you're hearing is not true. First, you saw it from Tillerson, although he kind of flubbed that one.
Right.
You saw it from Kelly. Yesterday, you saw it from Mattis, who was refuting yet another story that Trump didn't like. So, yeah, significant.
And that team right there, the fact that you have Kelly, you have Tillerson, you have Mattis, that has been the threat there, if you will, that have always kind of stayed together. They've always been a united front. And to your point, yeah, they're really surrounding all these situations. But I think that we were all stunned that Tillerson came out reacting to that report from NBC News, the fact that he may or may not have called the president a moron after a briefing, quickly knocked that one down. Mattis came down with more of that reporting yesterday. Now Kelly's out there just kind of saying, guys, this is the end of the fire. We're done.
We should explain to the viewer that there were a lot, and we didn't report this, but
NBC had this.
But also that there was a lot of speculation that Kelly was not happy and he was going to resign. I mean, that was making its way around the rumor mill in Washington, and I think he felt the need, obviously, to address that today.
And he still did say, this isn't my favorite job. I really liked being an enlisted Marine.
Right.
And kind of his very dry way. Also interesting, some of the things that he had to say, kind of bouncing it back to the press. And that we're hearing all of these rebuttals coming from cabinet officials and from General Kelly. But you have to wonder, is it coming from the top? Is this, we have a president who is very much concerned about what's being said in the media.
Oh, sure. And I think the one thing that we should all take away from today is that General Kelly came out to that podium because Donald Trump wanted him to. I want to go to the White House North Lawn where Jordan Phelps on our team is there. Jordan, we were all shocked over here to see General Kelly at the podium. What was the reaction in the room when everyone saw him walk out with Sarah Sanders there?
Hey guys, yeah, it was a surprise visitor. There was clearly shock in the room when Chief of Staff Kelly came out, as the president likes to call him, the chief, and started fielding reporters' questions. It was truly remarkable to see the Chief of Staff of the White House come out and actively refute that he is on the verge of quitting or being fired. And John, as you note, clearly this is something that the president must have asked General Kelly to come out and do, and to beat down those reports. The president, clearly a sign that the president is very frustrated by all this reporting, this rumor mill around the status of his chief of staff.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that this was the last-ditch effort to say, guys, we're all getting along. I will tell you that already multiple White House sources have texted me, thrilled with Kelly's performance, happy he got out there. Already seems like the full West Wing, probably going into the Oval, are happy with this. I do want to move on, though, because the other story that we've all been focusing on today is what's happening down in Puerto Rico and the threats from the president over Twitter early this morning, threatening to actually pull FEMA out of Puerto Rico. Now we know the island is still in total disrepair. We've been covering this for several weeks. It's not even full electricity still on the island, Justin.
Like a huge amount of the country is without power and water still. This is very much in emergency mode. And our Cecilia Vega asked about that today because of Trump's tweets this morning, which said more or less it boiled down to we can't keep FEMA in Puerto Rico forever! Exclamation point.
And the military.
And
the
they got freaked out. People are freaked out that he's going to pull out now. Right. So she asked Kelly that direct question. He said, we'll stay there till the job is done. And that's the other thing these guys do when they come out to speak on Trump's. They're playing cleanup half the time.
Yes.
That was a little bit of a cleanup mission there, too.
And you heard Kelly really parsing it out there, saying, well, the military's not going to stay forever. All of these first responders aren't going to stay forever, but there will be rebuilding. We will be there until the job is done.
And Jordan, throwing it over to you, because, this has been an ongoing battle between the president and the mayor of San Juan. He was down there a week ago, and they had a sort of weird interaction when he had a briefing down there in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, they sure did. And in that moment where they actually met, they shook hands. And when we were able to play back the video, we could tell that the mayor of San Juan actually told the president, this isn't about politics. This is about saving lives. And the president seems to sort of ignore that comment had been made to him in that briefing. But the White House has been batting back very strongly against the criticism coming from the mayor of San Juan, saying that she was actually silent in that briefing and that if she had something to tell this White House, that would have been the venue to do it. And she simply didn't.
Well, she got on a couple news outlets afterwards and has made it known ever since. If you're just joining us, this is the Briefing Room on ABC. I'm John Santucci, alongside Justin Fishel and Megan Hughes. Jordan Phelps is at the White House, keeping a watchful eye for us. I do want to move on, though, to another topic that broke very early this morning. This family that was freed, the Pakistan government helping the United States rescue them. One is an American, the wife. The other is a Canadian, the husband. You've been keeping your eye on this all day. This is an interesting one.
It's what it is it's strange and it's sad. This family's been held there since 2012. They were released overnight. They're still in Pakistan.
And why is that?
The husband doesn't want to get on the plane.
Right.
He doesn't want to leave. He's Canadian. He's worried that he's going to be arrested because, get this, he was once married to a former Gitmo detainee's sister. So he thinks, there's obviously some trauma that would have happened after, as Kelly put it, 5 years in a hole.
Sure.
But, and it's also some question about how this came about. There's no hard evidence that there was a real raid.
Right.
The Pakistanis... You heard Trump and Kelly say today, it's about time that they're cooperating and respecting us.
Right.
Which suggests that it was kind of an easy mission for the Pakistanis to get them out.
And Trump
but I
almost
don't know,
right, we don't know exactly how this happened.
We don't know exactly how it went.
Trump kind of threw a hint last night at his speech that this sort of looked like something was happening here. Someone that had not respected us now is respecting us.
Yes, that wording really, I think, captured the imagination of is this another calm before the storm? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad? What does this mean? I also have been thinking about this as a news story, and just imagine what this story would be if we didn't have everything else that we've seen over the past couple of weeks.
Right.
I mean, this, and of course, there's a lot more to learn, and we're going to be hearing a lot more about it.
And I think to your point, there are so many things going on that it's hard to kind of keep focus on it. One of the things that we have been following from quite some time, you all have been following this, I'm sure, at home, healthcare. Had a little news today, another executive order signing. Where are we at the moment? What was that whole thing about? Because I'm not really clear on it, to be honest with you.
Here's I can tell you two different stories. One, this is a big deal. Second, this is not a big deal. So,
that's a very interesting two stories. Wow.
That's my
Megan Hughes right there.
So you've got the president, saying this is in a very short time, predicting that people are going to be able to get cheaper health care.
Mm-hmm.
That's unclear.
Yeah.
This is a directive, this is an executive order telling agencies that they should consider allowing small businesses to band together and negotiate with the goal of having bare bones, cheaper plans. Now, could this become a big deal if large groups start doing this? There are public health experts that are warning those groups that are banding together and offering bare bones deals could attract the young and the healthy and really do some damage to those people with pre-existing conditions, the very sick who are counting on the exchanges.
But if you go over to the White House, and Jordan, I want to bring you in for this, this is still considered progress for the administration. It's still a step forward here. And healthcare has really been, as one aide said to me recently, a thorn in the president's side, that he can't get anything forward moving on healthcare, one of his signature campaign promises.
Yeah, that's right, John. You're seeing a frustrated President Trump here on this issue. That's really why I think you saw today there was this signing ceremony where he signed this executive order. But as Megan alluded to, what actually changes today is a little less clear. The executive order doesn't actually have any real teeth. It's just advising different departments within the executive branch to look into how this might be done. So it was a photo op, but it actually doesn't take any effect today. So this is an example of the president clearly wanting to have something to show on his signature campaign issue that he simply hasn't been able to deliver on it in a real way, and trying to take some executive steps forward. The president casting this as a first step to undoing Obamacare. But of course, as I mentioned, the order that was signed today doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, well, it's something, as many folks have said. They're trying to get something through. If you're just tuning in with us, the other shots you're seeing right now, the president's going to be holding an event pretty shortly in the East Room of the White House. He's going to be announcing his new DHS pick, who's actually the current Deputy Chief of Staff, Kirstjen Nelson. She'll be taking over. She was John Kelly's number 2 over in the White House, and actually served as his Chief of Staff at the Department of Homeland Security, so we'll be watching that. The other thing that I just want to go back to the briefings. This was all a John Kelly briefing today. The First Amendment. There's been a lot of debates about that recently. The president is jumping right into this. And before we dive in, I do want to take a listen to what John Kelly said to one reporter when asked about the president's frustrations. Flipped it right back on the media. Take a listen.
One of his frustrations is you, all of you. Not all of you, but many of you. As I say, when I first started talking, again, I'm a reasonable guy, but when I read in the morning, I read I won't tell you what I read, but and watch TV in the morning, it is astounding to me how much is misreported. I will give you the benefit of the doubt that you are operating off of contacts, leaks, whatever you call them. But I would just offer to you the advice I'd say. Maybe develop some better sources.
I'm ready to give him our phone number. Let us know. But, I think that really has been the frustration for the president, simplified in that one soundbite right there. The man is absolutely aggravated with the media, feels he's getting a totally unfair break. But the way that this story is kind of turned, the threats against the broadcast networks, he'll pull the licenses, that's getting into a little bit of dark sky. Right. I mean, it's not possible. Let's make that very clear.
That's the context that he's threatening to pull licenses from broadcast TV. He can't do that. The FCC and its commissioners would have to decide to do that, and they would.
And one have already said that's not possible.
And they would have to do it on all these local levels. It's just not really feasible.
Get Megan Hughes.
I have a few things to say. One, it might be possible. It might be possible. I talked to an academic today from GW who says that there is some precedent here.
Okay.
Nixon. So basically what this whole argument, the president threatening to revoke licenses is doing, it's bouncing it to the FCC. The FCC, according to this academic that I talked to, and from what I know about the FCC, can choose to investigate whatever they want to investigate.
I have a question, though.
Yes.
How... This academic, did he feel this was possible?
She.
Okay.
Let's not assume an academic.
It's a fair point. Fair point. Did this person assume that it was possible, not possible, likely, unlikely, highly unlikely, skeptical?
She had some evidence of cases in the past where, based on content, specifically during the civil rights era, one local affiliate having their license revoked because they were refusing to broadcast some of the news that was going on pertaining to civil rights. Now, that was not because an administration was leaning on the FCC. That was because of public interest groups. Now, say Republicans or the Trump administration got different interest groups to lobby the FCC and make the case that the news networks weren't doing justice to the truth.
Right.
An investigation could be launched.
Okay. There's a way to weave that.
And what we have not heard yet is from the FCC chairman. We have a new FCC chairman.
Let me bring Jordan. Let me bring Jordan in from the White House, because Jordan, I know you're over there. You've been watching every day what's happening down in the briefing, the tension. What are your thoughts on what's happening right now between the president and the press?
Yeah, look, we've seen the president put these threatening tweets out there, as you guys just broke down. The feasibility of actually doing this is not so great. But what we see here is the president using bluster. This is something we know the president does a lot. He makes empty threats. He likes to be tough. He likes to make these strong, broad statements. That doesn't mean that he's actually going to do something. Take yesterday as a case in point. In the Oval Office, he was asked point blank by a reporter, "Do you support putting restrictions on the media?" And the president said, no, he doesn't. But so that's kind of what we're seeing here. Is this is a threat the president's making. He's frustrated, but does he really intend to take action? No, I don't think he actually does. But just an interesting point of contrast. While the president is out attacking media outlets that he is unhappy with their coverage, pointed specifically at NBC for some reporting they've been doing recently regarding the moron comments and whether he asked to increase the nuclear arsenal. He sat with Sean Hannity for a full hour last night for an exclusive interview. So while the president is spending a lot of time bashing NBC and networks that are doing coverage he doesn't like, he then sat with Fox News, which has been more friendly in their coverage of the president, for an hour. So this president, not exactly an enemy of the media, but certainly it does not like media that isn't favorable to him.
An enemy of tough coverage, that is for sure. Jordan Phelps, thank you at the White House. We're going to wrap. A lot of news happening this afternoon that you're going to want to stick with ABC. For Justin Fischel and Megan Hughes, I'm John Santucci. Catch us next time on The Briefing Room, and always tune in at abcnews.com for the latest. Have a great day.